One of them walked away from the #1 show on television because his conscience would not let him stay, and outlived every man who did. One of them was shot aboard a hijacked airliner and survived, then died alone years later of a slow gas leak, and nobody noticed for more than a week. One of them sat down next to Johnny Carson, smiled at the audience, and told America he had months to live. And one of them died so suddenly in the middle of a season that the show itself never recovered. 67 years later, this is where all of them ended up. Lorne Greene was Ben Cartwright, the silver-haired father of the Ponderosa, the most trusted face in America. And before he ever set foot on that ranch, his voice had already carried a war into every living room in Canada. Born Lyon Hyman Greene on February 12, 1915, in Ottawa, Ontario, he was the son of Russian Jewish immigrants. His father made orthopedic shoes. His son made himself into a voice, deep, deliberate, enormous. And by the Second World War, that voice belonged to the entire country. As the chief newsreader of Canadian National Radio, he read the war into people's kitchens every night. The battles, the losses, the casualty lists. They called him the Voice of Canada. Then, quietly, people started calling him something else. The Voice of Doom. Because for years, almost nothing he said out loud was good news. He even left his mark on the mechanics of broadcasting itself. He devised a stopwatch that ran backwards, so an announcer could see exactly how many seconds he had left before the world cut him off. Hollywood found him late. He was already in his 40s and only 13 years older than the man cast as his eldest son when he sat down at the head of the Cartwright table in 1959 and became the most famous father in the history of television. For 14 years, he presided over that ranch like a granite mountain with kind eyes. And in the middle of it, he did something none of his TV sons ever managed. In 1964, a spoken word record called Ringo, Lorne Greene telling the story of an outlaw in that same rolling thunder of a voice, went all the way to #1 on the American charts. The Voice of Doom had a #1 hit record. When the Ponderosa finally went dark, he refused to retire with it. A new generation, one that had never seen a Cartwright, knew him as Commander Adama, leading the last of humanity through space on Battlestar Galactica. He was married twice and raised 3 children. On September 11, 1987, after ulcer surgery and the pneumonia that followed it, Lorne Greene died in Santa Monica, California. He was 72. Ben Cartwright buried 3 wives and raised 3 sons on a map that burned at the start of every episode. Lorne Greene spent a war reading the names of the dead to their families, and then spent the rest of his life being the father a whole continent wished it had. Pernell Roberts was Adam Cartwright, the eldest son, the handsome, brooding one in black. He is also the man who did what almost nobody in the history of television has ever done. He quit the #1 show in America, on principle. Born on May 18, 1928, in Waycross, Georgia, the only child of a soft drink salesman, he flunked out of 2 colleges, served in the Marines, and found his way to the stage, where it turned out that the boy from Waycross had a trained singer's baritone and real classical talent. He won acclaim on Broadway before Hollywood ever called. Bonanza made him one of the most famous men in the country, and he was miserable almost from the start. He thought the scripts were beneath the actors. He bristled at playing a grown man who still asked his father for permission. He said so, out loud, to anyone who asked. And network television in 1965 was not a place where people said such things out loud. So at the end of season 6, With the show sitting at #1 in the ratings and money falling from the sky, Pernell Roberts took off the black hat and walked away. Adam Cartwright rode off the Ponderosa and simply never came back. Hollywood said he had committed career suicide. And for almost 15 years, Hollywood was more or less right. He worked, but in guest roles, in wilderness years, carrying the reputation of a difficult man. What he actually did with that time tells you who he was. In March of 1965, at the height of his fame, he marched from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, alongside Martin Luther King Jr., one of the very few television stars willing to put his face in that crowd. And then, in 1979, the second act nobody expected. Trapper John M.D. 7 seasons, his own show. The difficult man outlasted the doubters. The private grief came late. His only child, his son Chris, was killed in a motorcycle accident in 1989. Those who knew Roberts said he carried it silently for the rest of his life. He married 4 times. He outlived his television father and both of his television brothers, the last Cartwright left standing. On January 24, 2010, at his home in Malibu, Pernell Roberts died of pancreatic cancer at 81, taken in the end by the same disease that had taken his youngest TV brother 19 years earlier. Adam Cartwright was the son who always did the sensible thing. Pernell Roberts threw away the safest job in Hollywood, marched where it cost him to march, buried his only son, and was still there, standing in the ashes of the Ponderosa, after every other Cartwright was gone. Dan Blocker was Hoss, the gentle mountain in the 10-gallon hat, the sweetest character on American television. And his death at 43 broke the show in a way it never repaired. He was born on December 10, 1928, in DeKalb, Texas, weighing 14 pounds. Folks said the biggest baby the county had ever seen. He never stopped being the biggest anything in the room. 6'4", close to 300 pounds, and by every account that survives him, gentle in the way only enormous men can afford to be. Before Hollywood, his life reads like a novel nobody would believe. He played college football. He did summer stock theater, hauling scenery because he could lift what 3 other men could not. Then he was drafted, and Dan Blocker went to Korea, not to entertain troops, but as an infantry sergeant. He fought there. He was wounded there and came home with a Purple Heart he almost never mentioned. Friends said you could know him for years and never hear a word about it. And here is the detail that tells you everything. After the war, the giant enrolled in graduate school and became a 6th grade school teacher in Texas. That is what he was doing when acting found him again. Teaching children, a man the size of a doorway, in a small-town classroom. As Hoss Cartwright, he became arguably the most beloved man on television. 14 seasons, 400 episodes, the middle brother with the huge heart. Audiences did not just watch Hoss, they loved him the way you love family. In the spring of 1972, Dan Blocker went into the hospital for a routine gallbladder operation. Days later, on May 13th, a blood clot reached his lung. He was gone in an instant. 43 years old, a wife, 4 children, and a country that could not believe the news. The producers faced a choice no hit show had really faced before. They did not recast. They did not pretend. When Bonanza returned that fall, Hoss was gone, and the show acknowledged what every viewer already knew. One of the first times in American television that a series let a beloved character die because the man himself had died. The audience never forgave the loss. Ratings collapsed, and within months, the Ponderosa was gone too. Hoss Cartwright was the strongest man in the West who never once used his strength in anger. Dan Blocker was a wounded combat sergeant who came home, chose a classroom full of children, and became so loved that when he died, an entire television empire quietly died with him. Before we ride to the rest of the Ponderosa, a question, and I would honestly like to know. Which Cartwright was yours? Then, the father everyone wished they had. Adam, the serious one in black. Hoss, the gentle giant. Or Little Joe, the heartbreaker. Tell me in the comments, and tell me who you watched it with, because nobody watched Bonanza alone. And if you are wondering how much of this checks out, every date, every wound, and every cause of death in this script was checked against primary sources, not recycled from other videos. If that is the standard you want, subscribe. We are going through classic television one cast at a time, the same way. Michael Landon was Little Joe, the youngest Cartwright, the beautiful one. The boy every mother in America wanted to feed, and every daughter wanted to marry. His real story starts about as far from the Ponderosa as it is possible to get. He was born Eugene Maurice Orowitz on October 31st, 1936, in Queens, New York, and raised in Collingswood, New Jersey, the son of a Jewish movie publicist and a Catholic former dancer, in a house that was, behind its curtains, a place of real fear. His mother attempted suicide more than once through his childhood. As a boy, he pulled her out of the ocean himself. He wet the bed into his teenage years, and his mother's answer was to hang the stained sheets out his bedroom window for the neighborhood to see. Eugene would sprint home from school every day, praying he could tear them down before the other kids saw. Decades later, at the height of his fame, he made a television film about exactly that boy. He never pretended to be from anywhere else. The Way Out appeared one afternoon at school when he picked up a javelin. The skinny kid nobody noticed threw it farther than anyone in the country, a national high school record, and a track scholarship to USC. Then the arm gave out, the scholarship evaporated, and Eugene Orowitz was unloading freight in a Los Angeles warehouse when a screen test changed everything. He picked his new name out of the Los Angeles phone book, Michael Landon. Bonanza made him a star at 22. But here is what separates him from every other pretty face of that era. While the cameras rolled, he was learning everything. He started writing episodes, then directing them. By the time the Ponderosa burned out, Michael Landon walked off that ranch as one of the most powerful creator-producers in the history of the medium, and built 2 more giant hits with his own hands. Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven. 3 enormous series in a row, most of them about the same thing. Decent fathers, warm homes, families that hold. Every single thing Eugene Orowitz never had. Built again and again on a soundstage until America believed it was real. He married 3 times and raised 9 children. He went gray in his 20s and dyed his hair for decades, and made fun of it before anyone else could. In the spring of 1991, at 54, came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, already spread. He announced it himself, joking with reporters while delivering the worst news a man can deliver. And then, on May 9th, 1991, he did something television has never forgotten. He walked on to The Tonight Show, sat down next to his friend Johnny Carson, and for an hour, dying, he made America laugh. No self-pity, no script. Millions of people watched a man they had grown up with say goodbye with a grin on his face. It remains one of the most watched, most remembered hours in the history of that program. 7 weeks later, on July 1st, 1991, Michael Landon died at his ranch in Malibu, his family around him. He was 54. Little Joe Cartwright was the charmed boy who had everything. The looks, the horse, the family, the land. Eugene Orowitz was a bedwetting kid from New Jersey who fished his own mother out of the sea and who spent 30 years building perfect television families so that everyone else could grow up inside the home he never got. Victor Sen Yung was Hop Sing, the Cartwright's cook, in over 100 episodes across all 14 years, scolding 4 grown men out of his kitchen with a cleaver in his hand. His real life was harder, stranger, and lonelier than anything the Ponderosa ever showed you. He was born on October 18, 1915, in San Francisco, the son of Chinese immigrants. His mother died when he was small, in the influenza epidemic that swept the world after the First World War. And for a time, the boy lived in a children's shelter until his father could put the family back together. He worked his way through the University of California, a Chinese-American kid with an economics degree in a country that had almost no roles for him except houseboys and cooks. He took the roles. He became famous as Jimmy Chan, the eager number 2 son in the Charlie Chan films. And when the Second World War came, he put on the uniform of the United States Army Air Forces. Then came Bonanza and steady work, but never steady money. Hop Sing appeared when the script needed him, paid by the episode, and when the Ponderosa shut down, television had little else to offer. So Victor Sen Yung, in his late 50s, reinvented himself with the one skill Hollywood had always mocked him for: the kitchen. He became a genuinely acclaimed chef. He taught cooking classes. He wrote a wok cookbook that sold for years. And then came July 5th, 1972, 8 weeks after Dan Blocker's death. Sen Yung boarded a routine Pacific Southwest Airlines flight from Sacramento to San Francisco. 2 hijackers took the plane on the runway, demanding $800,000 and passage to Siberia. When FBI agents stormed the cabin, the gunfire killed both hijackers and 1 passenger and wounded 2 more. One of them was Victor Sen Yung. The man who had cooked for the Cartwrights for 14 years lay bleeding in an airplane aisle and survived. He lived quietly after that in a small house in North Hollywood, running a mail-order pottery business, glazing and curing the clay pieces in his own oven. Sometime around the 1st of November 1980, that oven's gas line failed while he slept. There was no explosion, no fire, just a slow, silent leak. Victor Sen Yung was 65 years old, and he had outlived the kind of fame that gets a man checked on. More than a week passed before anyone came. Rescue crews, responding at last to a report of a gas smell, found him on November 9th. The death was ruled an accident. Hop Sing fed a family for 14 years and was never once allowed to sit at the table. Victor Sen Yung survived a war, a hijacker's bullet, and 50 years of Hollywood's smallest doors, and died in the one room where he had always been the master, with no one left to knock. Bonanza was never just a Western. It was a sales pitch, the most beautiful sales pitch ever filmed. When it premiered on September 12, 1959, NBC's parent company was RCA, and RCA had warehouses full of color television sets that America was not buying. So NBC built a Western in blazing, saturated color, green pines, blue Lake Tahoe, that burning map curling away at the start of every episode. Families walked past appliance store windows, saw the Ponderosa glowing like a stained glass window, and went inside to buy the set. Bonanza sold color television to America, and America, in return, made it the #1 show on Earth for 3 straight years. 14 seasons, 431 episodes. A theme song every person over 60 can hum without being asked. And then Dan Blocker died, and the heart went out of it. The audience drifted. The network moved it to a losing night, and in January of 1973, the map burned for the last time. The Ponderosa is scattered now. Dan Blocker went home first, and farthest back, he lies in DeKalb, Texas, in the same small county where the 14-pound baby was born. And here is the ending no writer would have dared. Lorne Greene and Michael Landon, Pa and Little Joe, rest today in the same cemetery, Hillside Memorial Park in Los Angeles, a short walk apart. The television father and his television son, neighbors again, this time for good. Pernell Roberts, the son who left, outlasted them all by decades, and then followed his little brother out the same door, taken by the same cancer in 2010. Victor Sen Yung has no grave that tourists visit, only the work. 100 episodes, a cookbook, and a story that finally, half a century late, is being told. For 14 years, America gathered on Sunday nights to watch four men on a ranch where every stranger found a meal and nobody you loved stayed lost. The men who played them knew the truth about war, about hospitals, about sons who do not come home. And they rode out under the burning map anyway, week after week, and made the country believe. The Ponderosa never existed. The people did. And their real lives were wilder, lonelier, and braver than anything the Cartwrights ever rode into.